Been a while, hasn't it? Well, I'm here again. This is Crazy Tom, and I'm here with a special edition of What Drives Me Crazy for this Wednesday, March 27th. I don't have much of a voice today, and it's probably because how screaming mad I was at the Flyers for screwing up last night and losing an extra time against the Rangers, pretty much giving the game gift wrapped away. Had a lead, took a bad penalty, Rangers woke up, ended up stealing the game. Yeah, I don't know how I'm still that passionate about sports, but I'm also passionate about this. I have a number of friends down in the Baltimore area, and people don't realize the significance of what happened late Monday night, early Tuesday morning, about 1:30 in the morning, when the Francis Scott Key Bridge off Interstate 695 at the eastern end of Baltimore crashed and disintegrated as fast as you could not possibly imagine. It's almost in a way like World Trade 7 when it collapsed that quickly. But the BBC and CNN, they said it had collapsed before it actually collapsed, and then they went to a commercial when it actually collapsed. Well, unfortunately, irresponsibility of media has struck again. Now, yesterday morning, I saw the video of the ship hitting the bridge and how quickly it went down. And I was a little peculiar as to why the ship was, shall we say, a little bit more to the left of the bridge and not in the middle. And it dawned on me. Originally, I paid attention to the ship. The power went out twice, and then smoke came out. And then all of a sudden, the ship ends up hitting the pillar at precisely the right spot to literally take the entire bridge down. This is the worst, shall we say, from a picturesque standpoint, worst tragedy I've seen that affects the visuals of what a city means, dating back to September 11th when the Twin Towers went down. Now, the tragedies cannot be comparable, but when it comes to eye candy and the picturesque visual effects, what it means to a city, the Key Bridge is part of that for Baltimore. People don't realize that bay leads you out to the Atlantic. And not only that, it's not only with cargo, but it's also for cruise ship too. They have to go underneath that Key Bridge, just like in New York and Bayonne, where they have to board the ship, and as they head out to sea, they have to go under the Verrazano Bridge. Could you imagine if one of those ships or a cargo ship hit the Verrazano Bridge? Think about it. And in the end, it looks like there's going to be double-digit fatalities. There were 8 construction workers on the bridge. When it was hit, they all went down, and 5 cars, including a cement truck, also was down. 2 of the construction workers were rescued. At last check, 1 was in critical condition. The other 6 are presumed dead, along with the other 5 cars, which happened to be inside the bay. So you're talking at least 11 people. And sadly, bodies are going to be found. The search has been called off. You're talking 48-degree temperatures. They're not going to survive in that. There's no way. I saw a post yesterday from an independent reporter named Lara Logan. And in a way, she really put a lot of thought into what she says. And I'm going to say something that she posted on Twitter X. But before I do that, let me remind you that my friend Mike Rivero, who has his website, whatreallyhappened.com, well, he wrote something, and I'm going to go ahead and read this to you. And that's where I'm going to warn you that you need to stay away from the corporate media, and there's good reason for it. Mike writes, and I quote, "The corporate media are neither free, honest, accurate, or fair. The corporate media are the means by which the world's money junkies bypass civil leadership and usurp the power of nations for their own nefarious ends." Makes you really wonder. And then yesterday, and you wonder why we are the laughing stock of the world. Go back to November 2020. That's all you need to know. Jim Hoff of the Gateway Pundit said elections have consequences. Stolen elections have catastrophic consequences. And here's one of them. When Joe Biden said he traveled many times over vehicle-only Francis Scott Key Bridge while commuting by train or car. There are no tracks on the bridge, by the way. Just a memo to Joe. And how can somebody be the leader of the free world, appointed, to say the least? And on the social media platforms, there's a major uptick of pro-Joe Biden posts and anti-Trump posts. Obviously, we're seeing the algorithms go away from Trump and more toward Biden, but Biden is incompetent. He's beyond incompetent. If Green Day truly were independent, they would do an American Idiot Part 2 because they went after the younger George Bush in 2004. They should go after Joe Biden in 2024, but they're not. Tells you all you need to know about the industry. As I continue to scroll down looking for potential stories here, Democratic Governor Wes Moore, Senator Chris Van Hollen, and state law enforcement and transportation officials spoke to reporters about the status of search and rescue efforts and the investigation after a cargo ship collided with a bridge, causing the bridge to collapse. And all the governor said was, our response teams are making every possible effort to rescue and recover the victims of this accident. Preliminary investigation points toward an accident. Well, that's what I thought in the morning. But then last night they called off the search. The people are presumed dead. What about the cars that were on the bridge when that happened? Was it an empty bridge when the ship hit it? Well, this is according to Lara Logan, and this is a long post, and I want you to listen very carefully to it. I'm going to move my post in here so I can have a little bit of a better read so you can take a look. Lara Logan said the following. According to multiple intelligence sources, the Baltimore Bridge collapse was an absolutely brilliant strategic attack on U.S. critical infrastructure. Most likely cyber, and our intelligence agencies know it. In information warfare terms, they just divided the United States along the Mason-Dixon line exactly like the Civil War. 695, the Francis Scott Key Bridge, is the second busiest strategic roadway in the nation for hazardous material. And now that the Key Bridge is gone, possibly up to 5 years, maybe more, which is what people are saying how long it'll take to recover. This bridge was originally built and opened in March of 1977, so just a little bit over 47 years ago. And it was built specifically to move hazardous material. That's fuel, diesel, propane gas, nitrogen, highly flammable materials, chemicals, and oversized cargo that cannot fit in the tunnels. Well, that supply chain is now crippled. Make no mistake, this was an extraordinary attack in terms of planning, timing, and execution. The two critical components on that bridge are the two load-bearing pylons on each end closest to the shore. They are bigger, thicker, and deeper than anything else. These are the anchor points, and they knew that hitting either one would be a fatal wound to the integrity of the bridge. As all of you have seen with the video, more than half a mile of bridge went in the river. Now, likely, you'll definitely have to build a new one now. Not only that, the strike also caused so much damage to the structural integrity of the bottom concrete part that you cannot see and won't know until they take the wreckage apart. So in essence, structural destruction is likely absolute. That means the attack was perfectly targeted. Lara spoke to one person and said the following. They, meaning the enemy, have figured out how to bring us down. As long as you stay away from the teeth of the U.S. military, you can pick the United States apart. We are arrogant and ignorant, a lethal combination. Former President Barack Obama said they would fundamentally change America, and they did. Now we are in a free fall ride on a roller coaster with no brakes and just picking up speed. Really makes you wonder. We're going to mention Obama in a moment in regards to a movie that was produced by him last year in regards to cyber attacks. Think about that for a second. But I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. Meanwhile, I continue on what Lara says. The footage shows the cargo ship never got in the approach lane in the channel. Now, you have to be in the channel before you get into that turn. So the location was precise and deliberate. The ship chose a bend in the river where you have to slow down and commit yourself. And once you're committed in that area, there is not enough room to maneuver. There should have been a harbor pilot to pilot the boat, and you're not supposed to traverse any obstacles without the harbor pilot. Now, people have added saying that this thing that Lara writes claims there should have been a harbor pilot on board, but other news sources, we're not sure if they're reliable or not, are saying that there were in fact 2 pilots on board. This is extremely, extremely compelling. Now that's according to a Reuters report, and again, that's part of the mainstream, so how can they be trusted? Well, here's why everything happened the way it did. Think of the timing. They chose a full moon so they would have maximum tidal shift, rise and fall. Brisk flow in that river on a normal day, and it had a lot of rain recently, so water was already moving along at a good pace. Now you hit it with enough kinetic energy to knock the load-bearing pylon out from under the highway, which fatally weakens the span, and then 50% of the bridge falls into the water. When you look at it, all these factors, this is how you teach people how to do this type of attack. And there are so few people left in the system who know this. So literally, if you think about it, we have a junior varsity team on this field. Tremendous navigational obstruction, huge logistical nightmare to clean this up, and the number of dead is tragic, but not the whole measure of the attack. Now, this kind of bridge is constantly under repair, and the repairs happen always at night because there's so much traffic, and they cannot obstruct that during the day. So the concern is for the repair guys who are on foot, out of their vehicles, working, who may now be in the water. Highest temperature at most at this time of year, 48 degrees. That's why they called off the search, because there's no way in recovering them. When you choke off Baltimore, you have cut the main north-south hazardous corridor in half. That's Interstate 95. Now, all the hazmats have to go around the city or go somewhere else. To move some of that cargo through the tunnel, you may be able to get a permit, but those are slow to get and require an escort system that is expensive and has to be done at night. Just like the George Washington Bridge, they always have the oversized vehicles go across after like 8:30 in the evening, and it takes about half an hour for them to cross before traffic's let back through. Something else to consider. For every $100 that goes into the city, $12 of that comes from shipping. Lara actually believes this will cripple the city of Baltimore at a time when they do not have the resources to recover. Now, Steve Ferguson, one of the people, commented saying, 2 pilots on board. Well, remember, the feds had Ray Epps and an army of other infiltrators on January 6th. A very similar scenario here. And Joy Flick says, face it, we'll never know. If Trump's elected, there's a small chance that over 4 years he can get to the truth or some semblance of the truth. But the way our federal agencies have been corrupted and weaponized, it's unlikely that even the president can even really learn the truth. That's just a sad testament to how far we've fallen as a country. That's a scary thought, too. If I can find one more here. Mindy Robinson. Yep, that sure sounds like our illegitimate government. They killed 58 people in Vegas to push gun control and got away with it. Now the corrupt sheriff that covered it up is now our governor somehow, despite being hated by both parties. And finally, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny stated this, and so it begins. Won't take much to totally implode America. No one is watching. Does anyone care? Once she's gone, she's never coming back. Read 1984. Read Brave New World. Fiction that has become the playbook. Unbelievably scary, and it really makes you wonder why things are happening the way that they are. And if you think people are going to believe the story the media is going to basically say about Baltimore, think about this. After the Moscow attack, which Russian President Vladimir Putin blamed on a combination of US, Britain, and Ukraine, with over 140 people killed, or at least that's what I think, could Baltimore be their retaliation? You can't rule this out, because if that is the truth, World War III is on. As I look at the Gateway Pundit, a lot of the crazy stories that have come up, I'm just going to read a couple of headlines for you and then get to something before I leave here. How about this? Lara Logan was featured in the show The War Room and says, everyone knows that this is a cyber attack on a critical infrastructure corridor in the United States. Another headline, the captain and crew of the Dali cargo ship were taken to Walmart before the ship crashed into the Key Bridge. So if they were not on the ship when the ship crashed, maybe they knew. The Baltimore Sun reported this. The apostleship of the Sea Director, Andrew Middleton, told the press he took the Dali captain and crew members to shop at a local Walmart over the weekend. Now, Apostleship of the Sea is a Catholic ministry that helps crew members of international ships run errands, go shopping, and perform other tasks. Now, post-September 11 security measures require crew members of international ships to be escorted through port areas by vetted persons. Middleton told USA Today that as soon as he heard the news that the cargo ship crashed into the Key Bridge, he messaged one of the members on WhatsApp and asked if everyone was all right, to which the crew member responded everything was okay. Unbelievably amazing. As mentioned, the latest update on this tragic bridge collapse is that the U.S. Coast Guard stopped searching for the 6 missing construction contractors working on the Key Bridge at the time the bridge collapsed, and authorities have presumed they are dead. The tragedy that just keeps on being more tragic. Now, continuing on, some of these headlines is like, this is crazy. The NTSB has recovered the black box from the ship that crashed into the Baltimore Bridge. Now, I do not know exactly what's going to happen with that, but that's going to be the key to everything. That is what's going to tell you what really happened. NTSB Chair Jennifer Hammondy announced that the data recorder known as the black box has been recovered from the Dali cargo ship that crashed early on Tuesday morning. While talking to CNN, Hammondy revealed that NTSB investigators obtained the black box to the Dali and sent it back to the NTSB's lab to be analyzed. Hammondy shared that investigators in the NTSB's lab will review the black box's data and will release their findings in a press conference later today. We shall see about that. The black box is expected to reveal a timeline for the Dali and ultimately lead to what caused the ship to lose its power. They're expected to host a press conference once the data from the black box is finished being evaluated, which means if they wait long enough, they can certainly cover something up. So we continue onward. I look at a couple of other headlines, and it's just hard to believe. And this one, and I'm gonna go there 1 second here. Looking at some of the other stuff, the Associated Press rushed to politicize historic figure Francis Scott Key after the bridge collapse, which I will read briefly. After the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge, the Associated Press wasted absolutely no time rushing to politicize the history around Francis Scott Key, the author of the national anthem. Well, this is what the media does now. They never let a crisis go to waste, right? It's almost like they're preparing for a suggestion that it be renamed for someone else. From the story, real quick thing. While the first verse of our national anthem is the most well-known and sung, many of you may not know that there are a total of 4 verses. In the 3rd verse, there's a reference made to a slave. Key, whose family owned people and owned enslaved people himself, supported the idea of sending free black people to Africa, but opposed the abolition of slavery in the United States, according to the National Park Service's Fort McHenry National Monument and Historic Shrine. His personal history has made him a controversial figure in some quarters. In fact, in June of 2020, a statue of him in San Francisco was taken down. It's all so predictable, isn't it? When did the media transform into a bunch of scoldly social justice advocates? One posted, "Do your followers actually not know who Francis Scott Key is? If yes, is it because you taught them that the Star-Spangled Banner is racist?" A part of chicks already positioning to rename it the George Floyd Memorial Bridge. Another says, gearing up to rename the bridge already, are we? Another says, only took 12 hours for the bridge was racist articles. Is this unreal or what? And as I'm keeping a very close eye here, I think there's like 2 more things I want to give. And as I scroll up, and this is one of the most crazy things that you'll think. A Utah Republican blames the bridge collapse on DEI. Yeah, that. DEI. We don't mean Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. Listen to this. Utah State Representative Phil Wyman, who is a Republican candidate for governor of Utah, is linking diversity, equity, and inclusion to the collapse of the bridge. Wyman is challenging Governor Spencer Cox for the Republican nomination. But Lyman appeared to indicate that the makeup of the commissioners for the Port of Baltimore was a factor in the incident. And in a post on Twitter X, Lyman said, "This is what happens when you have governors who prioritize diversity over the well-being and security of citizens." And in another post, he wrote, DEI equals DIE, which I'm sure you've seen Elon Musk write. Lyman then shared a post from the Young Conservative Federation. In another Twitter X post, he said, Commissioner Corinthia A. Barber, an African-American, quote-unquote, knows nothing about parts, but she is a diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging auditor and consultant. In a separate post called Commissioner Sandy A. Roberts, also African-American, quote-unquote, an attorney who at the time of his appointment generally knew some marine law. And Lyman was not alone in linking DEI to the collapse. Florida Republican State Representative Anthony Sabatini said, DEI did this. And it's unbelievable because readers add some context there, but here's something you may not know. According to Baltimore's Channel 13, WJZ television, the last inspection of the bridge took place in May of 2022, almost 2 years ago. At the time, the bridge scored a grade of 6 out of 9, which is passing, but is considered fair. But get this, even more crazy. The bridge was rated fair since 2008. And the 2022 report identified a concern with a reinforced concrete column. It could not be learned if the column was the one struck early on Tuesday. That column was downgraded from a health index of 77.8 in the prior report to 64.9. Even a prominent bridge engineer said that he was not surprised about how the Baltimore Bridge collapsed. And that's according to the Western Journal. What you can do is go to the Western Journal and look up the article on westernjournal.com that says, prominent bridge engineer says he's not surprised about how the Baltimore Bridge collapsed. Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of the highly controversial representatives, stated, there should be a serious investigation into the horrifying tragedy of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Maryland. Is this an intentional attack or an accident? Praying for the victims, survivors, and families. Real quick, I'm kind of looking at something else here. And I'm just scrolling down very, very quickly here. It was Ian Firth, after analyzing video of the bridge's collapse, he observed what seemed to be two defensive barriers in the water adjacent to the bridge, which are designed to shield maritime infrastructure from vessel impacts and are referred to as dolphins. And that's according to the Washington Post. Firth pointed out that because the Dally approached the Key Bridge at an angle, it rendered these protective measures ineffective in preventing the collision that resulted in the bridge's collapse. He said that had the Dally been traveling straight on instead of at an angle, it likely would have hit the protective objects around the bridge, and he noted that if there were more vessel protection objects around the bridge instead of just two, the Key Bridge might still be standing. Again, look up westernjournal.com and look the article, Prominent Bridge Engineer Says Not Surprised by Baltimore Bridge Collapse. I'm going to end by reading something else I read off Twitter, which is scary. A gentleman named Steve. His Twitter handle or X handle, Steve Loves Ammo. You can also think about what I'm going to say after I read this. And this is in regards to the media. They told you there weren't any biolabs in Ukraine. They told you that Putin didn't blow up the Nord Stream 2. They told you Ukraine wasn't suffering major losses. They told you that the U.S. wasn't funding both sides of the conflict. They told you masks and vaccines were nearly 100% effective. They told you COVID-19 came from a bat in a wet market in China. They told you that Anthony Fauci wasn't using gain of function. They told you that there is not a southern border crisis. They told you there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They told you January 6th was the worst attack since September 11th. They told you lockdowns were for your health. They told you there was no supply chain crisis. They told you the Epstein client was a baseless conspiracy. They told you Donald Trump would do everything that Joe Biden is currently doing. They told you there was no elite child trafficking ring. They told you federal agencies don't target Americans. They told you there was no such thing as the Uniparty. They told you there was no such thing as a deep state. And now they told you that the Baltimore Bridge collapse was an accident. Once you finally realize how long they have been lying to you, the quicker you question the narrative for absolutely everything. Those words from Steve. Again, his Twitter handle is at Steve Loves Ammo. You can follow him there and subscribe. You can check that out. But in the meantime, got some things to do. That'll be it for Crazy Tom's What Drives Me Crazy. Thanks for joining me. You can also check me out, Twitter, Instagram, Gab, at Crazy Tom Show. And you know I'm going to have more shows and updates when applicable. So thanks for watching. Join me next time for another edition of What Drives Me Crazy. Stay safe. Love one another. We only have each other. Because when it comes to humanity, we are all that we've got.